Okay, welcome to another episode of Smashmouthing Football's NFL podcast, and I'm here once again with our UK-based journalist Conor to talk about the divisional AFC and NFC Championship games. Conor, before we get to the football, let's talk about some of the coaching changes that happened in the last week. Which one were you most surprised by?
Yeah, like I say, a couple changes or a couple appointments are starting to happen now, and I think the one that shocked me the most, honestly, was probably the one last night was Raheem Morris to the Falcons. It kind of just looked for weeks there, really, that Bill Belichick. I mean, it was the only team he interviewed with, and I think we all assumed that Belichick would get straight back into it, or at least someone would hire him. But yeah, I was kind of shocked there. I kind of thought Belichick was set in stone there in Atlanta with how the whole carousel was going, and then boom, a bit out of nowhere, Raheem Morris returns really to Atlanta.
Yeah, I think obviously the fact that they knew what they were getting obviously went in Raheem Morris's favour. But I think you're right, yeah. Bill Belichick went for the job. They interviewed Mike Vrabel. I think it's the only interview he's taken so far in the off-season. And I think the fact that Raheem Morris, obviously Arthur Blank knows what he's getting. He's very highly rated in terms of what he did in LA. But he seems to be a very high-value person. And I suppose it was surprising that he was given the job considering the bigger names that probably went for it. Do you think Bill Belichick is out of the running for a head coaching job this year, or do you think he could still get his foot in there somewhere?
Yeah, I think it kind of seemed like the only team that we're really interested in with was Atlanta. Really, like I say, I would be even more shocked really now if he was to go with one of the Seahawks and Commanders who are some of the last two. I think you look at the Commanders job, I feel they're going to go for probably a younger guy, a coordinator in that sense, a first time head coach, and then Seattle. I mean, they just got rid of a Pete Carroll. Would they want to bring in another old head like Belichick? I don't think they would really. So, yeah,
Who's older?
definitely. Today it's like a contest, really, isn't it? But I know, yeah, like I say, maybe next year, maybe he goes somewhere else, or I don't know where on earth Belichick would go, really. But yeah, he's gonna have to take a year out by the looks of things.
He could be one of those, mid-season, get rid of the coach and hire Bill Belichick for a run at the playoffs. But it's interesting that he hasn't got a job considering he's the most successful coach of all time. I thought it was quite interesting today with Klopp leaving Liverpool in football and how much he's kind of like missed by his city. And then you think Bill Belichick was at the Patriots for 27, almost 30 years, and when he gets to the end of his time, he's won 6 Super Bowls with them. It's like, see you later, Bill. Like, there doesn't seem to be that resonance with him in the city compared to just like Klopp at Liverpool, or maybe even Dan Campbell at Detroit. Dan Campbell has kind of turned into the Klopp of the NFL, really, in terms of he has the whole city behind him, and everyone's kind of buying into what he's selling.
They got to have the
Before
downfall,
we move
don't
on
they?
to
And
the
then the downfall's got to happen, and then the city turns on them.
oh, sure, it could happen this weekend. But it's going to be one of the things you mentioned about Washington. Like, I know Washington have interviews with Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn on Monday and Tuesday next week, and they're in-person interviews. And I've heard that Washington gave a third interview to Dan Quinn, which the Washington supporters weren't too happy about him being from the Cowboys. But he's got a third interview, and they've also interviewed Eric Bieniemy in-house. So it's very, very interesting to see what they will do. I haven't a clue, but I'm hoping it's Ben Johnson. He's the hot ticket in town right now, and I think I'm surprised that Ben Johnson probably hasn't been offered. I thought he might have been offered the Chargers job before they went for Jim Harbaugh. What do you think of
Yeah,
Panthers hiring Dave Canales?
I think that's quite a nice hire, to be honest with you. I think the Panthers job, I think it's quite unanimously probably one of the worst jobs out there. It kind of feels like the Texans jobs over the last couple of years, where you're just going into a bit of a fire and you don't know what you're getting yourself into. But I think really, I was really impressed with what he's done with Baker Mayfield this year, even before he was quarterbacks coach at Seattle. I remember I used to very much like looking into. I thought he was an up and coming OC, and I remember he was always a guy I wouldn't have minded in that role. And he did it with the Bucks this year, and he got the best out of Baker. Buccaneers, they made it to a divisional round in the playoffs, and they were a good offense by the end of things, especially passing wise. So I think at the minute you knew they were going to get an offensive guy because they really need a guy to sort of gel with Bryce Young. They've pushed all their eggs into this that they have to make it work. So I think he's a guy that did well with Geno Smith. He's done well with Baker here, and I think they'll sort of be hoping for him to start getting some things going with Bryce Young. But it definitely feels like a long rebuild still for the Panthers. They're definitely far off it, I think, and I still wouldn't be surprised if the next year or two that they're still probably picking in the top five, honestly.
Yeah, they probably need to add as much talent as around them as they can. But it's interesting that the new general manager, is it Dan Morgan, that he worked with Canales up in Seattle. So he's bringing in a guy he knows. He's bringing in a guy from a divisional rival who knows the division, which probably all plus signs in terms of Dave Canales' column. Um, where, who do you think the Seattle Seahawks are going to go with? Are you still
Yeah,
thinking Dan Quinn?
yeah, I think, like I say, he was a name we mentioned. I think we recorded a podcast right when Pete Carroll got the sacking, didn't we? And I think Dan Quinn was a guy. I think it's honestly between. I think they go for an experienced person. I know I said they wouldn't go for Belichick, an old person like that, but I think they go for experience. And I think that job's honestly probably going to be between Dan Quinn and Mike Vrabel. Again, it's a kind of a shock that Mike Vrabel's still on the market. I think you had all
Yeah.
these firings and they're not really found new homes really. So he's another guy that maybe take a year out if he doesn't land one of these two roles. But I think I would still probably lean towards Dan Quinn. It makes the most sense. He was the DC there during the Legion of Boom, and I just think he knows the place really, and especially the front office as well. He's going to get on in that sense. So it's definitely probably maybe between those two candidates there.
Why do you think Mike Vrabel isn't getting more traction? I know there's a rumor out there that Andy Reid might resign at the end of this playoff run, and that Mike Vrabel, an ex-Kansas City Chief, has a chance to go in there possibly as head coach with Mahomes as quarterback. Everybody's going to take that job. But why do you think he's not getting more traction from other teams or more interviews?
Yeah, I mean it is interesting. I guess his fire or his departure from Tennessee happened quite early on, so you assumed it wasn't a late run or anything in that sense. I think sometimes it can maybe come down to the head coach wanting the right situation, and maybe there isn't he feels the right partnership there in that sense. I know obviously he interviewed with Atlanta, but then apparently he wants Arthur Smith back as his OC, and Atlanta aren't going to willing to just take the guy they fired to come back into the building. So I think obviously the Seattle one makes sense, and the Commanders, I think that would be a nice pairing. But like I said, I think they kind of look like they might be going down the younger route. So yeah, I think sometimes it can come down to the head coach wanting the right situation. It's not always just on the team thinking that he's not the right guy for them. So maybe next year rolls around, maybe he gets one this year. But there's always the links back to college as well. His ties to Ohio State, but I highly doubt that happens now.
Yeah, one thing about I suppose one mark on his book is that he's in terms of his offense, he's ran the ball a lot. I know he had Derrick Henry, but especially in the last season or two, outside of Derrick Henry, they didn't really have a lot of offense in Tennessee. And the way the league is now, everybody wants to have that offensive guru. But I'd like to see him as Washington head coach. I'm surprised he hasn't interviewed for the job, so that's why I'm thinking maybe there's more truth to that rumor about Andy Reid. And if there is, I could understand him not taking jobs, considering the fact that maybe he's got the old elbow nudge to say that he could be in line for that job if it came up. But yeah, I'm surprised that he hasn't got a job yet, considering the amount of inexperienced people who've got in as first-time head coaches. Okay, let's move on to the football. And let's start off with the Detroit Lions against the 49ers. First of all, what did you make of the 49ers last weekend? I thought they were very, very lucky to get past Green Bay. Maybe lucky is the wrong word, but Green Bay had them on the rack, and Jordan Love threw a terrible pass to really kind of give them a present of winning the game. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean the Packers definitely showed that they're not invincible really, these 49ers team. I think everyone sort of had looked at them and the Ravens as just these two untouchable teams. And I think the Packers, like I say, were playing better than anyone else in the NFL right now. But they made them work for it. And like I say, it's made me a bit more confident maybe heading into this game, seeing that there is places to exploit on this defense, especially in the run game, which suits the Lions. So I think they're still going to be heavy favourites. Of course they are. They're the number one seed at home. But yeah, I think it's definitely made I know a lot of the Lions fan base are much more confident heading into this week.
And do you think that's exactly where the Lions are going to attack them with the run game?
Yeah, I mean that. I think, like I said, they're a very balanced offense. But yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if we did, especially early on, try and dominate that run. I feel our game plan might be very similar to the Rams in a way. I remember that first drive, it was just run after run after run, and then once that happens, you can really start looking over the middle for Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. There's weapons everywhere really, and it's a good defense. It's a better defense than the Rams. You look at Nick Bosa, you look at Fred Warner, but yeah, I think definitely in that run up the middle, and especially on the outside with Gibbs, they have that partnership obviously because Montgomery can go in the middle, Gibbs on the outside. It's like a dual threat little uh, tangent right there. So yeah, I think run game is where they're definitely trying to cement it and start going.
Yeah, I think one of the impressive things about the Lions last week was their offense, especially in the second half when they opened it up. Like the Bucks had no answer, and I think that Lions offense can score against any team. And it was interesting that the 49ers defense, okay, they got only for Greenlaw's 2 interceptions. They didn't put Jordan Love under a lot of pressure during that game. And conversely, the Packers did put Purdy under pressure, and he seemed to, instead of taking sacks, he seems to be just throwing the ball to get rid of it, and could have been intercepted on a number of occasions himself, where he just kind of nearly got lucky, just throwing away the ball and nobody catching it. Are you worried about how the 49ers are going to, one of the things, this is how I think the 49ers are going to attack the Lions. I think they're going to go back to Kyle Shannon's own running scheme. Instead of trying to run up the middle, try and get to the outside, and then once they have that established, it's all the play action stuff. It's getting the ball out wide to the running backs like Debo or CMC. And I think their whole platform is built off their running game as well. And especially they're going to run left with, Trent Williams and Banks. They're two huge men, and every time they kind of get into a serious down and they need to run the ball, they're always running left. So how do you think the Lions defense is going to match up?
Yeah, I mean the defense still worries me if I'm being honest with you. I've looked at this Lions run as the Bengals a couple years ago, when they made the Super Bowl, and I kind of felt everyone looked at the Bengals and went, they didn't have a good offensive line, did they? And everyone sort of went, you need a good offensive line, you need this, but they just kept going further and further despite getting all these sacks. And I feel the Lions is on this similar run, but it's their defense. They keep giving up ridiculous passing yards every game. I think for the last 5 games straight, they've given up like 150 passing yards to at least a receiver, and half the time these receivers have been going for like 200 odd. The defense still worries me, and you're going up against Carl Shanahan. It's going to be scary, but they kind of just show up in the big moments. Like I say, if they need an interception, they go and get it. If they need to force a stop, they will just get it. And they've been a lot better in the red zone. So I feel it's playoffs, and I feel a lot of it might come down to the red zone as well. Can Carl Shanahan get it working there? I mean, we've got to see if Debo's going to play. I actually want him to play. I know there's a lot of personal stuff between Debo Samuel and CJ Gardner-Johnson, which I can't wait for really. So that's going to be an exciting matchup. But yeah, I would be lying if I said I'm not worried.
Yeah, I think one thing about Debo, Sidney Gardner-Johnson, what a leader to have back there. He's only after coming back in the last couple of weeks from injury, and I think the Lions really needed that leadership in the back end. But the thing about Debo is he's like a bowling ball, and when he's not on the field, there is a lot more pressure to get the ball to Kittle. I think when Debo's on the field, Kittle has that bit more space. McCaffrey has that bit more space because you're trying to cover 2 guys rather than 3 guys, and somebody's always going to be single covered. So I think he does play. Maybe he doesn't get the amount of carries that he probably would, or the amount of targets. But I think this week, just based on how I think the 49ers will play with his own run scheme, I think Kittle is going to be a huge target for them. I think he's going to be the main person that gets them the yards down the field in the passing game. Especially last week, Ayuk didn't really. I thought he had a poor enough game. John Jennings came up with a couple of catches, but again, it's a step down in level. So, but it's a really, really exciting matchup. I can't wait. I really think the Lions can put it up to the 49ers. And I also think that game with the Packers would bring on the 49ers a huge amount. It's that's a tough game that they probably needed to get up to the level of the playoffs.
It kind of seems like Lions are going to bring a fair few at the game. I think there's some about 20% fans there, so I don't think it's going to be as one-sided in the fan sections as well.
Well, hopefully, it's always better when there's atmosphere from both sides. So prediction: who do you think is going to win?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe to not curse myself, I'll say the 49ers, but I like I say, I don't want to. I do sort of feel like the Lions could maybe do this. It's definitely the 49ers are the better team at the end of the day. There's no denying that, but this Lions team has something about them. They really do, and I think they love an upset. They've played as the favourites the last 2 weeks, but where they play their best is the underdog. They want to be the underdog. They want people to look down on them. So I can't make a prediction, honestly, because I don't want to curse myself. But yeah, it definitely feels like it's going to be a cracker.
Yeah, hopefully. I think the 49ers, I do think their defense isn't playing as well as it was earlier on in the season. But I think, for me, they're the best team in the NFL. And I think they have a really strong offense and defense. And, I think the 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl, so I'm going to roll with the 49ers. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope the Lions beat them. The whole Dan Campbell story since he's gone in there for the last 3 years has been a brilliant story in the NFL. They've one of the youngest rosters in terms of just the amount of star talent they have that are nearly all under 25 years old. So hopefully they'll be around for a while. But yeah, I'll be backing their Lions, and hopefully they'll do it. But if I put money in it, the 49ers will win it for me.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. But I think of the two, I think I was going to say of the two, this is probably the hardest call, but no, I think the other one's actually even more difficult now that I'm looking at it. So what did you make of Kansas City Chiefs and the Bills last weekend?
Yeah, I mean it was a great game to watch to begin with. They were back and forward, touchdown after touchdown, lead change, and then the ending was a little bit anticlimactic with the missed field goal. So it's kind of put a damper on it in that sense. But I mean the Chiefs look good. I mean there was so much talk, wasn't there, about Patrick Mahomes' first away game in the playoffs, and they lived up to it. They sort of embraced it. But Baltimore, I do think they're a different brand, especially on defense. It's hands down the best defense in the league. I don't think you can really argue with that. And yeah, they're going to make things difficult. So it's going to be another great one.
What do you think makes this Ravens defense better than just say the last year's version?
They have players everywhere and they play so fast. I mean, they don't give everything. I think it really comes down to you sort of look at the linebacker position, and it kind of feels that it's starting to get neglected, but Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen are two of the best linebackers right now, and you just watch the field. They don't allow anything over the middle. If you do get a catch, you're tackled straight away. There's no yards after catch in that sense. And that defensive front as well, there's just players everywhere. The secondary, Carl Hamilton's looking amazing. I remember he was a person in the draft everyone sort of loved, and then he just kind of fell a bit because he's a safety that you don't know his position, but he's found a position in Baltimore and he's playing amazing. And Marcus Williams as well. He was a guy I love at free safety with. So they just got players everywhere. They play faster than everyone. I think their DC is amazing as well. Mike McDonald, former Michigan. He's a guy that I think Washington were maybe linked with him as a head coach. I think he would be a great head coach as well there. But
they've had an interview with him as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel.
But I don't know if they've had a second interview.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of like the defensive version of Ben Johnson, this young up and coming guy. But yeah, they just got players everywhere, and they've got great coaches as well.
And I think they've Marlon Humphrey back this weekend as well, and Mark Andrews, the tight end. So they're getting healthier as the season's going on compared to everybody else. In terms of just say the Ravens against the Texans, like the Texans hung in with them in the first half, but they didn't get an offensive touchdown. Do you think the Chiefs have just say the linebacker core that the Texans had great speed in their linebackers in terms of trying to stop Lamar in the first half? you think the Chiefs are going to get much change out of trying to stop Lamar when he's using his legs?
Yeah, I mean that would definitely be the game plan, isn't it? You got to slow down Lamar, and he's been a lot better through the air this year, but you still got to force him there because he's going to be the most dominant on the ground. I mean, you could maybe put a lot of that slow start to the. You don't know whether it's the bye. Obviously, they had a week/2 week bye in a sense or slash rest. So it's tough. It's difficult to put a finger on it, but yeah, I think Chiefs are going to have to come out quick, like the Texans did. And they're going to have to be consistent throughout the game, which the Texans weren't. But yeah, with Mahomes there, you think they can do better on offense, and then it's about slowing down Lamar. I think that's really what the game's going to come down to.
Yeah, I thought Mahomes looked his best as he's done all season last week, and his receivers were catching the ball. I mean, Kelsey came up with the big moments, with 2 touchdowns, and then when Mahomes spread it around to the other receivers, they're actually coming up with it. I think they'll probably lean a little bit on Pacheco just to get him initial yards, especially in the first half. Just try and maybe wear this Baltimore defense down a little bit. But the thing is about this Baltimore defense is they've got so much strength and depth. I mean, you look at the players that probably won't start. Kyle Van Noy, Geno Stone, lads at every level who have huge NFL experience. So even if you wear them down, the replacements coming in are of a really, really high level. How do you think the Chiefs' offense is going to attack the Ravens' defense? What would you do if you were in Andy Reid's shoes?
Yeah, I mean they're definitely going to look to try and get that run going with Pacheco, and Travis Kelce's always going to be the main guy there. So it's about really, like I say, finding that balance. Or no one's really been able to run the ball on Baltimore this year, so it's going to be difficult to take a run game. So I do feel they might have to lean on Mahomes more than they probably would like, but he is probably the best quarterback in the league, and I feel that this game if the Chiefs are gonna win, Mahomes has got to play an amazing game, which I think he's very capable of doing. So I think on offense, it's gonna be how well can Mahomes play against this Baltimore defense.
I wonder if he's under so much pressure that he'll actually use his legs a bit more, and try and, like in Buffalo, he used his arms, like he used his passing, was elite level, but he went off on 1 or 2 runs that made a huge difference. Remember that one in the first half where he went down the left wing? So yeah, it's a really, really exciting matchup. And I think the Chiefs were played so well last weekend in Buffalo. I think they'll embrace this challenge for the Ravens, and I am going to go with the Chiefs in this matchup. I think Mahomes is, he's wearing the crown, he's the king, and until someone knocks him off, I think I'm going to roll with Kansas City. Especially, I also like their DBs. I think they've got 2 really good cornerbacks in Snead and McDuffie. I like that Justin Reed, the safety. I think he hits really hard. Nick Bolton hits really hard. So I think it's going to be a really, really physical game. And I'm going to roll with the Chiefs. So Conor, give me a prediction there for how do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to go against the Chiefs, especially with Mahomes at QB. I feel a lot of these games you maybe go with the better QB, but I'm gonna have to go on the other side. I'm gonna go with the Ravens. I remember watching them when the Lions played them. I think it was week 7, and I was at that point. The Ravens they weren't amazing. They were sort of considered like borderline top 5 team, and I remember seeing. I was like, this team is hands down the best in the league. They've got players at every single level, offense, defense. They're both amazing. Lamar's playing better. I think he's a lot more suited to play off football with the way he's playing right now. So I think it's going to be close, like you say. But I just feel the Chiefs might have to rely a bit too much on Mahomes. And while that's not a bad thing, I just think offense wins your games, but defense wins your championships, as they say. And I think the defense are going to come through this one.
Yeah, no, they really have an elite defense, and I remember you saying that earlier on in the season, just how good this Ravens team was. So I'm glad they're living up to the billing. Would you be happy with a Ravens 49ers Super Bowl? Obviously not with being a Lions fan, but yeah. Do you think obviously the Ravens and 49ers are both favourites, but do you think there's more? Would you have more hope for the Lions or more hope for the Chiefs?
In what sense? Sorry, to making it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, to make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think ultimately I would have to say I think there's more chance of Chiefs making that Super Bowl. They know how to do it before. They've been there,
Mm.
they've done it. But yeah, I mean, Ravens 49ers, I still think it's a good Super Bowl rematch. I think from one of the first Super Bowls I've watched. We're back with the Harbaugh brothers.
The Harbaugh
Uh,
Bowl, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, so I think ultimately throughout the whole season they've kind of looked like the best two teams. So I think it would still make a great matchup. But any of these four teams in the Super Bowl, I would love to watch, especially one in particular.
Yeah. Well, best of luck this weekend with the Lions. I hope to do it. They're such an exciting team to watch as well. And I think they've given a real template to teams of how to play in the NFL in 2023-24 is have a brilliant offensive line. When you have a brilliant offensive line, it really, really helps your whole team out in an amazing way. I think we saw that with the Eagles last year as well, that when you have a dominant offensive line, it can really keep you in games and keep the other quarterback off the field. So, Conor, I think we'll leave it there for this week. Thanks again for the chat, and I can't wait for the two games on Sunday.
Yeah, we'll see you for the big one.